The year is 2003. The place is a county auction house. The air smells of diesel and dust and old coffee. An auctioneer is speaking in tongues, a rhythmic chant of numbers and bids. He's selling off the assets of Miller Farm and Fleet, a local institution for 50 years, now closing its doors for good. Tractors go, plows go, wrenches and toolboxes and hydraulic lifts. Then they bring it out. A New Holland Model 66 hay baler from the 1950s. It's immaculate, restored better than new. The paint is a perfect cherry red. The decals are flawless. It sits under the lights like a museum piece. A young reporter from an agricultural journal is there. He's covering the end of an era. He watches the bidding. It starts at $1,000, a respectful price for a piece of history. Then it goes to $5,000, then $10,000. The reporter frowns. This is strange. $15,000, $20,000. The room is getting quiet. The only sound is the auctioneer and two bidders volleying numbers back and forth. $25,000, $30,000. The reporter leans over to an old man sitting next to him. The man's hands are gnarled. His face is a roadmap of worry. The reporter knows who he is. Frank Miller, the owner. The man losing everything today. The reporter asks him, "Why is a 50-year-old baler going for the price of a new one?" Frank Miller doesn't look at him. He just stares at the machine. His voice is a whisper, a rasp of dry leaves. He says, "You think they're bidding on a baler?" The reporter is confused. Frank points a shaky finger. They're bidding on what was found inside it. The bid hits $40,000, $45,000, $50,000. Sold for $50,000. The room is silent for a moment, then a smattering of applause. The reporter looks at the winning bidder, a man in his mid-40s, weathered face, clear eyes. His left sleeve is pinned neatly at the elbow. He walks to the front. He places a hand on the red paint of the baler, a gesture of ownership, of history, of a debt paid. The reporter doesn't understand the story. Not yet. But he knows he just saw the end of it. This channel tells stories like that one. The ones buried in the dirt. The ones hidden inside old machines. The stories of people who were told no, and who answered with a lifetime of work. If you believe those stories matter, subscribe to this channel. Because the story of that baler and the man with one arm, it didn't start in that auction house. It started 23 years earlier, with a laugh and a refusal. Let me take you back. The year is 1980, a hot July afternoon. Arlo Finch stood in the back lot of Miller Farm in Fleet. He was 22 years old. He was thin but strong, the way a young farmer is strong. A strength born of necessity, not vanity. His left arm ended just below the elbow, a gift from a war nobody wanted to talk about anymore. The sleeve of his work shirt was folded, pinned with a single shining safety pin. He had $200 in his pocket. It was folded into a tight square. Money he'd earned haying for other men, throwing bales with his one good arm, swinging them onto wagons with a practiced rhythm. A rhythm of pain and pride. He was looking at a piece of junk, a New Holland 66 baler. Sitting in the weeds behind the main shop, rust had eaten holes in the sheet metal. The tires were flat and cracked. The pickup reel was bent. A length of chain dangled from the gearbox, like a broken promise. It had a sign on it, hand-painted, $200 or best offer for parts. Arlo had looked at it for an hour, walking around it, kneeling down to look underneath, touching the cold, pitted steel. He saw not what it was, but what it could be. He walked into the office. The air inside was cool. It smelled of oil and new tires. Frank Miller sat behind a big oak desk. He was a pillar of the community, served on the church board, coached Little League. He was a good man, a decent man. He looked up and smiled, a kind, genuine smile. Arlo. "What can I do for you?" Arlo was nervous. He respected Frank. Everyone did. He unfolded the money from his pocket, put the damp bills on the desk. "I'd like to buy the old Baler out back." He said it quiet, but firm. Frank Miller looked at the money. Then he looked at Arlo. He looked at the pinned sleeve. And then he did something. He didn't mean it to be cruel. He didn't mean it to be unkind. He laughed. It wasn't a mocking laugh. It was a soft, paternal chuckle, the kind of laugh a father gives a son, when the son says he's going to build a rocket to the moon. A laugh that said, "You have no idea." Arlo felt something hot in his chest, shame, anger, but he said nothing. He just waited. Frank leaned forward. His voice was gentle. "Son, you don't want that thing. That's not a Baler. That's a pile of trouble. The gearbox is shot. The knotters are worn to nothing. You can't even get parts for it anymore." Arlo nodded. "I know it needs work. I can fix it." Frank's smile faded a little, replaced by a look of genuine concern. "Arlo, listen to me. I've been selling farm equipment for 30 years. I've seen young men go broke. I've seen them get hurt. That machine, it's dangerous, even for a man with 2 good hands. The timing has to be perfect. The twine arms, the plunger. If you get caught in that..." He didn't finish the sentence. He just looked at Arlo's empty sleeve. The meaning was clear. Arlo's jaw tightened. "I'm careful." Frank sighed. He stood up and walked around the desk. He put a hand on Arlo's shoulder, a fatherly gesture. "I know you are, son, and I know you're a hard worker. Everyone in this county knows it. But I can't do it. I'm not going to be the man who sells you the machine that takes your other arm. I wouldn't sleep at night. My conscience wouldn't let me." Arlo felt the air leave the room. This was worse than anger, worse than contempt. It was kindness. It was a well-meaning certainty, a certainty about what he could and couldn't do, a certainty that built a wall he couldn't fight, because it was made of concern. Frank continued. "Look, I'll tell you what. I need someone to sweep up the shop, organize the parts room. I'll pay you a fair wage. You can save up. Maybe in a few years we can talk about financing a newer Baler, a safer one." He was offering a job. He was offering a path, a safe path, a path that required Arlo to accept the limits Frank had set for him. Arlo stepped back, out from under Frank's hand. He looked the man in the eye. He didn't raise his voice. He just stated a fact. "I'm not a sweeper. I'm a farmer." Frank's face hardened, just a little. The kindness was still there, but now it was mixed with pity. "I'm sorry, son. My answer is no. It's for your own good." Arlo picked his money up from the desk, folded it back into a small, tight square. He put it in his pocket. He walked out of the office. He didn't slam the door. He didn't curse. He just left. Proving someone wrong who is cruel is a fight. Proving someone wrong who thinks they're being kind is the loneliest war there is. Arlo Finch drove home in his old Ford pickup. The silence in the cab was deafening. He drove past fields of corn and alfalfa, fields owned by other men. He pulled into the yard of the small house he rented with his father. The paint was peeling, the porch sagged. It wasn't the farm he grew up on. That was gone, lost to the bank in '78, a wound that never healed. His father, Samuel, was sitting on the porch swing. He was a quiet man, made quiet by loss. He watched Arlo get out of the truck. He saw the look on his son's face. He didn't have to ask what happened. He knew. Arlo sat down on the top step of the porch. He stared out at the small patch of dirt they called a yard. He told his father everything. The words came out flat, empty of emotion. He told him about the Baler, the money, the laugh. He told him what Frank Miller had said, about being careful, about it being for his own good. When he finished, the silence returned. The only sound was the creak of the porch swing and the buzz of cicadas in the heat. Samuel Finch stopped the swing with his foot. He looked at his son. He looked at the pinned sleeve. He saw the shame in Arlo's eyes, the shame of being told he was incapable, the shame of being protected. Samuel leaned forward. His voice was rough, like stones in a riverbed. He said, "You know what the bank took? They took the house. They took the barns. They took the tractors. They took the 400 acres my father cleared with mules." He paused. His gaze was fixed on the ground in front of them, the dry, cracked earth of their rented yard. But they didn't take the dirt. He looked at Arlo. His eyes were fierce. "They can't ever take the dirt. They took everything from us except the knowledge of the dirt. That's inside you. It's in your one good hand. It's enough." Arlo looked at his father. He saw no pity in the old man's eyes, only a hard, unshakable belief, a belief that had been stripped of everything but the essential. Samuel spoke again. "That man, Frank, he's a good man, but he sells iron. He thinks the answer is in the iron. He's wrong. The answer is in the dirt. The dirt is enough." That phrase, "the dirt is enough." It settled into Arlo's soul. It was not a motivational speech. It was a statement of fact, a foundation to build on. Arlo stood up. He felt something shift inside him. The shame was gone, replaced by a cold, quiet resolve. He knew what he had to do. The next morning, Arlo didn't go to town. He drove to the county scrapyard, a place of rust and ruin, mountains of twisted metal baked in the sun. The scrapyard owner, a man named Gus, knew Arlo. He was chewing on a toothpick. Arlo asked him a question. "Are you getting a load from Miller's today?" Gus nodded. "Yep, old Baler, some other junk, coming in this afternoon." Arlo pulled the money from his pocket, $175. He kept $25 for fuel. He said, "I'll give you $175 for the Baler. More than you'll get for it is scrap." Gus looked at the money. He looked at Arlo. He'd heard the stories. He knew Frank Miller had turned him down. He shrugged. "Your funeral, kid. It's yours. Just get it out of here by tomorrow." That afternoon, Arlo came back with a borrowed trailer. He and Gus used a chain and a tractor to drag the dead Baler onto it. The sound of steel scraping on steel was terrible. The sound of a beginning. He hauled it home. It sat in the yard like the skeleton of some prehistoric beast. His father came out and looked at it. He just nodded once. That evening, another truck pulled into the yard. It was Silas Croft, an old mechanic, a man who had forgotten more about farm equipment than most people ever learned. He'd been a friend of Arlo's grandfather. He got out of his truck. He was carrying a toolbox. It was heavy. He walked over to the baler, chewed on an unlit cigar. He circled it twice. He kicked one of the flat tires. He said, "Your dad called me. Said you'd bought yourself a project." Arlo said, "I think I made a mistake." Silas spat on the ground. "Mistake is buying something you don't understand. This is just metal. Metal listens to reason, and a big enough hammer. Let's get to work." For the next 3 months, they worked. Every evening after Arlo finished his day job, every weekend from sun up to sundown. They tore the baler down to its frame. Every bolt was a battle. Every nut was a war against rust and time. Arlo learned a new kind of math, the geometry of leverage, how to use his body, his legs, his shoulder, to make his one arm do the work of two. Silas never offered help unless asked. He would just watch. And when Arlo was truly stuck, Silas would say something quiet. "Try it from the other side. Use a longer bar. Let the tool do the work." He was teaching him, not just how to fix a machine, but how to exist in a world not built for him. They rebuilt the gearbox with parts scavenged from 3 other dead machines. They welded plates over the rusted-out holes. They retimed the knotters, a delicate, maddening process, like performing surgery with greasy fingers. It was during the reassembly of the plunger mechanism that they found it. The previous owner had done something strange. He had welded a series of steel rods and levers to the side of the baling chamber. They connected to a custom-made foot pedal near the hitch. It was crude. The welds were ugly but strong. It made no sense. It wasn't in any manual. Silas studied it for a long time. He traced the path of the levers with his finger. He pressed the foot pedal, watched a small arm engage the twine release. And then he understood. He looked at Arlo. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. "This wasn't made in a factory. This was made in a barn, by a man with a problem." Arlo looked closer. He saw it too. The standard controls for the baler required 2 hands, one to steer the tractor, one to constantly adjust the tension and trip the tying mechanism. It was a constant 2-handed dance. But this modification, this changed the dance. It moved the most critical function, the tying, to the operator's foot. It freed up the right hand. It made it possible, just barely possible, for a man with one arm to run the entire machine by himself. Silas looked at Arlo. A slow smile spread across his face. "Looks like you bought the only baler in the world that was built for you." It was a revelation, a piece of anonymous genius, a message in steel from a ghost, a man who had faced the same problem and had invented his own solution. They finished the rebuild in late October. Arlo painted it himself, not the perfect cherry red of the auction house, but a coat of functional, rust-preventing red primer. It wasn't beautiful, but it was his. That spring, in 1981, Arlo Finch baled his first field. It was 20 acres of alfalfa, belonging to a neighbor, a man named Henderson, who remembered Arlo's father giving him seed on credit 20 years ago. The community watched. They stood by the side of the road, leaned on their truck hoods, and watched the one-armed boy on his old Ford tractor, pulling a resurrected piece of junk. The first few bales were a disaster. The tension was wrong. They fell apart on the ground. He heard the whispers. Some were sympathetic, some were not. He saw Frank Miller drive by in his dealership truck. Frank slowed down, watched for a moment, and then shook his head and drove on. A look of sad vindication on his face. Arlo ignored them all. He got off the tractor. He adjusted the knotters. He tinkered with the foot pedal linkage. He remembered what Silas had taught him. Let the tool do the work. He got back on, and he tried again. And then it happened. A perfect bale dropped from the chamber, tight, square, heavy. Then another, and another. A rhythm began. The tractor's engine, the plunger's thump, the knotter's click. It was the sound of a promise being kept. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? Not by an enemy, but by a friend, by someone who thought they were protecting you, by someone who had your best interests at heart. What did you do? How did you answer? Let me know in the comments below. Because what Arlo Finch did next wasn't about proving one man wrong. It was about building a world where he didn't have to ask for permission. Let me tell you about the next 22 years, because this is where the story becomes bigger than one man and one machine. This is where quiet work becomes a loud statement. 1981. Arlo baled 20 acres for Henderson. He made 800 bales. He charged $1.50 a bale. He cleared $1,200. He paid back the money for the trailer. He bought Silas a bottle of the good stuff. He put the rest in a coffee can. Cash. 1982. He baled for Henderson again, and 3 of his neighbors. Word was getting around. Arlo's bales were tight. He was meticulous. He never left a field a mess. He worked from sunrise to sunset, never stopping. He baled 100 acres that year. He made $5,000. He bought a newer, better sickle bar mower. Cash. 1983. He leased 50 acres of his own, land nobody wanted, rocky, hilly. He worked it himself, clearing stones by hand, seeding it with a mix of hardy grasses. He bought a Ford 8N tractor, old but reliable. Cash. He was still using the New Holland 66. It was his only baler. He knew its every sound, every vibration. He could diagnose a problem from the cab of the tractor, just by the change in rhythm. He saw Frank Miller at the feed store. Frank nodded at him. A polite, distant nod. There was no apology in it, only a quiet surprise. 1987. This was the year he bought his first piece of land, 40 acres, the piece that bordered his father's old farm. He paid for it outright, walked into the bank with a cashier's check. The teller had to count it twice. He signed the papers. His father stood beside him, silent, tears streaming down his face. That evening, they walked the land. Arlo knelt down. He picked up a handful of the dirt, his dirt. He let it run through his fingers. He looked at his father. The dirt is enough. His father nodded. It always was. Cash. The expansion continued. It was a quiet, relentless accumulation, not of wealth for wealth's sake, but of independence. Every acre was a word in his argument. Every bale was a piece of evidence. 1992. Arlo now owned 200 acres. He was custom baling for farmers in 3 counties. He hired his first full-time hand, a young veteran like himself, who was struggling to find work. He bought his first brand new baler, a big, round baler, efficient, modern. He parked it in the new machine shed he'd built, but he kept the old New Holland 66. He put it in the main barn, cleaned it after every season, kept it in perfect working order. It was more than a machine. It was a monument. 1998. He owned 800 acres. He had a fleet of modern equipment, John Deere green, Case IH red. His trucks were a common sight on the roads. Finch hay and straw, painted clean on the doors. His father had passed away, peacefully, in the new house Arlo had built, on the land they had bought back. Frank Miller was still in business, but things were changing. The big corporate dealerships were moving in. Frank's loyal customers were getting older, retiring. Their kids were selling the farms. Frank's business was slowly shrinking, like a pond in a drought. He saw Arlo's success. He saw it every day. In the fields Arlo bought, in the trucks that drove past his dealership, in the talk at the diner. He never spoke of it. He never admitted his mistake. But he watched. He was a witness. A quiet witness to the life he had told Arlo was impossible. And sometimes that is its own form of justice. The reckoning didn't come with a shout. It came with the quiet turning of a key in a lock. The year is 2003. The sign on the door of Miller Farm and Fleet reads, "Closed." A letter in the window thanks the community for 50 years of patronage. Frank Miller is selling it all off. The land, the buildings, the inventory. The end of a legacy. A few days before the auction, Arlo Finch walks into the dealership. The showroom is empty. Ghosts of tractors remain in the clean spots on the floor. Frank is in his office, packing files into a cardboard box. He looks up when Arlo enters. He looks tired, older than his years, defeated. The two men look at each other across the room. 23 years of silence hangs between them. The memory of a laugh, the memory of a kind refusal. Arlo doesn't say anything. He doesn't have to. His presence is enough. He is the living, breathing result of a judgment proven wrong. Frank breaks first. He stops packing the box. He sinks into his chair. He looks at his gnarled hands. His voice is low. "I was wrong, Arlo." The words come out hard, like pulling a deep root from dry ground. Arlo stays silent. He lets the man speak. Frank looks up. His eyes are glossy. "That day, when you came in here, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was protecting you from the machine, from bankruptcy, from yourself. I saw a disabled boy, and I felt sorry for him." He shakes his head. "That's the God's honest truth. I was so certain, so sure I knew what was best." He looks around the empty office, the monument to his certainty. Certainty is a powerful poison, isn't it? It makes a man blind. "I never once thought." He trails off. Arlo speaks. His voice is not angry. It is not triumphant. It is calm and devastating in its clarity. "You weren't protecting me, Frank. You were telling me what my life was worth. You were telling me the sum of my potential. You drew a circle around me and told me not to step out of it, for my own good." Frank flinches. The words hit him harder than any fist could. Arlo continues. "The difference between you and me, Frank? I didn't believe you. I believed my father. He said the dirt was enough. He was right." A long silence fills the room. The silence of a truth finally spoken. Arlo could have left then. He had won. The argument was over. But that wasn't why he was there. He says, "Your head mechanic, Dave. He's a good man. He's got a family." Frank nods, confused. "Best mechanic in the state." Arlo says, "I'm expanding my shop. I need a foreman. Tell him to come see me on Monday." Frank Miller stares at him. This is not revenge. This is not pity. This is grace. An act of profound, quiet grace. And in that moment, Frank finally understands the depth of his misjudgment. He had not only underestimated Arlo's ability, he had underestimated his character. All he can do is nod. "Thank you, Arlo." Arlo turns and leaves. The debt is paid. The circle is broken. But that's not the end of the story, because there was one more secret hidden in the heart of the old machine. A few weeks later, Arlo decided to do it. A full, frame-off restoration of the New Holland 66. It was time. He wanted to take it to shows, to tell its story. He took it apart himself, in his own clean, well-lit shop. He knew every piece by heart. When he got to the strange, custom-welded levers, the ones that made everything possible, he decided to grind down the ugly old welds, to make them clean and smooth before painting. He puts on his safety glasses. He takes up the grinder. Sparks fly. He grinds down the first weld, on the hollow tube of the main lever, and he sees something, a small brass cap, tacked into the end of the tube, hidden by the weld. Curious, he pries it off. It's been sealed with wax. Inside, there is something rolled up, a small, thin sheet of brass, tarnished with age. He unrolls it carefully. There are words, stamped into the metal with a punch set, a name, J.D. Croft, a date, 1955, and below it, a short phrase, 4 words. One arm is enough. Arlo stares at the piece of brass, J.D. Croft, Silas's older brother, a man Arlo had never met, a man who had lost his arm in a farming accident in the 50s, a man who had died long before Arlo was born. It all clicked into place. Silas had known. When he first saw the Baler, he had recognized his brother's work, his brother's genius, his brother's defiance. He never said a word. He had let Arlo discover it for himself. Arlo wasn't the first. He was part of a lineage, a quiet brotherhood of men who refused to be limited, who answered the world's certainty with their own ingenuity. He closed his hand around the small piece of brass. He felt the weight of that history, the loneliness of that fight. He was not alone. He had never been alone. Which brings us back to the auction. 2003. The winning bidder, Arlo Finch. He paid $50,000 for his own Baler, not to own it, but to honor it. He built a small museum on a corner of his farm, open to the public, free of charge. The Finch Center for Adaptive Agriculture. In the center of the main room, on a raised platform, sits a cherry-red New Holland Model 66 Baler. Perfect. Shining. Next to it, in a glass case, on a bed of black velvet, is a small, tarnished piece of brass and the words stamped into it. 1 arm is enough. The story doesn't end there. The Finch Foundation gives out 3 scholarships every year to disabled veterans who want to study agriculture. It provides grants to inventors and engineers who are designing and building adaptive equipment, foot pedal steering for tractors, voice-activated controls, prosthetics designed for the harsh realities of farm work. The legacy is not one man's triumph. It is a systemic change, a door kicked open for others to walk through. The most dangerous limitation is the one imposed by someone who genuinely believes they are protecting you. Certainty about another person's capabilities, delivered with kindness, is more damaging than outright hostility, because it cannot be fought with anger. It can only be disproven with decades of work, with a quiet, relentless refusal to believe the limits others set for you. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is being told they can't. They are being told no for their own good. A boss, a teacher, a friend, a parent. They are drawing a circle around that person's potential. They are being kind. They are being certain. They are being wrong. If you know that person, or if you are that person, share this story with them, because sometimes the answer isn't to argue. The answer is to go find a piece of junk and build a life out of it. The answer is to remember. The dirt is enough. One arm is enough. You are enough. Thank you for listening. If this story meant something to you, subscribe to the channel and comment below with a time someone doubted you and you proved them wrong. Your story matters.